Hello YouTube. I've been doing handstands for 2 years now and I've become fairly good at them. I like doing them without jumping or kipping because that's how the one who I was inspired by does them. I'm talking about Hit Richards, aka the Calisthenics Kings. I can also do them completely straight like a gymnast. I can do handstand push-ups with additional weight, and I like clean and controlled movements and full range of motion. But over time, I almost forgot what struggles I faced when I wanted to learn it. So to help out those in need, I decided to cover pretty much everything I've learned about the piece of art known as the handstand. I'll talk about the many mistakes people make when trying to learn it, and about the strength and balance needed. Consider this my full, in-depth handstand tutorial. To begin with, there are two types of handstands, and it's very important to know the difference between them. So there's the completely straight and the not straight. I really want to explain the difference because a lot of people think that you have to do them straight or you're not doing them right, and that's simply not true. This is the truth. If the completely straight version requires this much strength, then the not straight one requires a bit more, but this one is still harder, because if this one requires this much balance, then this one requires this much balance. So which one should you practice? If you're an aspiring gymnast who wants to go pro, you absolutely have to learn it completely straight. But if you're an average Joe like me, and probably most of you are, go with the not straight version and don't let anyone discourage you. You see, gymnasts have to learn it completely straight because those are the rules of their sport. It's not just the handstand, everything has to be as straight as possible. That's just the very essence of gymnastics. Now, many gymnasts have said it and I'm gonna repeat it. When you're completely straight, everything falls so nice that the muscles are being used the least, and in my book, that's not really that much of a good thing. You want to use your muscles the most and make yourself stronger. So the completely straight version is harder simply because of balancing issues, but in reality, the not straight version contracts the muscles better. Also, think about the elbows. Many people want you to believe that you must keep your elbows completely locked out. That again is wrong. It's only true for the professional gymnast and it has nothing to do with getting stronger. In reality, it only makes holding the handstand that much easier. Because when you're locked out, the muscles aren't going to be targeted as much. Also, it can cause joint pains in the future. So at the end of the day, it comes down to your goals. Do you want to get stronger or do you want to be more skilled? I think if you're an average person like me, go for strength and safety first, and only after mastering the not straight version should you focus on complete straight handstands like a gymnast. I mean, look at the Calisthenic Kings. He doesn't focus on completely straight handstands. He always has a shoulder angle, but he's strong as hell. Also, the not straight version resembles the planche because your body and your arms are diagonal. And the more you lean forward, the more it's gonna resemble the planche, and it might become the planche eventually, and it just builds more power. Now that I've covered all of that, I'm gonna talk about how to get the balance of the handstand and what are the two biggest mistakes people make. So there are 3 points of balance: palms, shoulders, and waist. You must remember them because they can make or break your handstand. Now, to be very balanced at handstands, you must be able to feel where each of these balance points are relative to each other and manipulate them using your brain. Let's take a look at the handstand from the side. These are the 3 balance points. Remember this: to be stable and balanced, you must keep the palms and the waist aligned but keep the shoulders in front of them. The more your shoulders and head are in front of the other two balance points, the more stable you're going to be, and also, the more your head and shoulders are in front of your palms and waist, the more strength you're going to build, because it requires more strength to hold. That is the principle of balance in the not straight handstand. And this is the most simple and easy to understand way I can explain it. Basically, the only difference here between these positions is the placement of the shoulders and how much power it requires, rather than balance. What you must do is keep that balance point in front of the other two while keeping them fairly aligned. The problem is not so much understanding this concept because it's rather simple, but it's actually about feeling the concept. And many people make a big mistake right before they try to do a handstand. This mistake is something I like to call being in a position for a sprint instead of a position for a handstand. What the hell am I talking about? I'm talking about this. See how my head and shoulders are between or behind my palms? But I said that your shoulders have to be in front of your palms and waist. So that's it. That's the first mistake people do. We're not going to be sprinting. So why the hell are you in a sprinting position? We are going to be raising into a handstand, so we have to be in a position for a handstand. And basically the position for a handstand is the one where your head and your shoulders are in front of your palms. Now, when you are in this sprinting position, there's no real way to actually push into a handstand, and the only choice you are left with is to jump. And this is the second big mistake people do. They jump. Some call it kipping, others call it jumping. I call it the no gains way of doing a handstand. The reason why I'm against this method is because people are jumping aimlessly and are just hoping that a miracle will happen. Do not jump aimlessly without even thinking about what you're doing. It's ridiculous to me how many people I know that seem to think that just doing kipping and jumping attempts over and over and over again without any mind-body connection is a good way to learn the handstand. It's not impossible, but it takes a lot of time and causes a lot of problems, like easily forgetting how to do the handstand. I have two friends, you guys know who you are, they learned the handstand by jumping. They constantly need multiple failed attempts before they can actually hold the handstand, and if they haven't practiced it for about a week, they forget how to do it. So there are a lot of consistency issues with this whole jumping method. And I also have another friend who is still using this jumping method to learn a handstand. More than 12 months have passed and he is still learning how to do it. There was this one time he told me that he finally learned how to do a handstand, and when I told him, okay dude, show me, he failed. He couldn't do the handstand, and he was all like, oh, let me just try 50 times, I'll get it at least once, dude. Is that really the end goal here? Do we want to be able to hold a handstand once out of 50 tries? I'm getting too damn pissed off about this, so let's just move on. So that's it. Those are the two biggest mistakes I see people making when doing a handstand or trying to. The only time I would recommend following this jumping method is if you're being coached by a professional and not just being on your own. Now, let's get back to the balance of the handstand. Like I said, you must be able to feel where your shoulders, waist and palms are relative to each other and control them. So to help you with the actual feeling of the balance points, I'm gonna take a camera and stick it to my head so I can show you what to look for when you're trying to do a handstand. What you should do is focus on the ground and on your palms. Never let your face be in between the palms. You must always keep the palms behind your face at the bottom of your eyesight. All of this will simply make sure that you're keeping the shoulders in front of the other two balance points. Also, don't jump. Instead, practice this slow and controlled movement. This is how you get strong. Jumping doesn't do anything. Before you try to do a handstand, try to only lift your feet off the ground like this. If you're able to remain in this position, then congratulations, you've almost achieved the handstand. From this point on, just slowly lift the legs while keeping your head and your shoulders in front of your palms. Just keep looking at the palms, keep the shoulders in front of them, and only move your legs. The rest of the body has to remain stiff. If you weren't able to remain in this position, this means you either lack balance or you lack strength. To find out, you should try to do a frog stand. It requires no strength and it doesn't build any, but it helps with control of balance. It looks exactly the same except you place your knees on top of your elbows. If you can't do a frog stand, always remember that it requires no strength, it's all a matter of technique, and the way you hold the frog stand is again by being aware of the balance points in the human body and by keeping the shoulders in front of the palms and the waist. If you can do the frog stand, but you still can't do this or this, more on this later, then your problem is not the balance anymore, it's the strength. The good part about this is that there are so many different ways to gain the pushing power required for a handstand. Honestly, the strength required to hold a handstand isn't that much. Being good at dips is almost enough. You should be able to do them slowly with full range of motion. If you are having trouble with dips, then you will have to use weightlifting exercises like bench press, military press, and skull crushes to become stronger. And of course, the regular push-up will also benefit you greatly. Use these 4 exercises to become better at dips, but remember, to become stronger, you always have to have enough rest and enough daily intake of protein, carbs and fats. Once you can perform, let's say, about 4 sets of 8 good clean dips, you're ready to try the bent arm tucked planche. This position resembles this one, but it's much simpler, and it's the position the calisthenics kings goes into very frequently right before a handstand. And it's the position I go into before a handstand as well. So it's very important to be able to hold it. Even more important than this one. When I was learning how to do a handstand, I was looking at a lot of YouTube videos. And the ones by the calisthenics kings are the ones that stuck in my mind the most. And one thing that I noticed was that 80% of the time he did a handstand, he went into a tucked planche right before the handstand. So it's a very important position. So bend those arms a little, tuck those feet in, and try to hold it. Remember, never let your shoulders be on the same level with your elbows. Your elbows have to be below the shoulders. This is very important because if you bend your elbows too much, you'll end up in this position where you can't really do anything. You will feel stuck. Now I am experienced and I can just push into the handstand from the position, but if you try this while you're still learning, you won't be able to. So don't bend the arms too much, only bend them slightly. But don't lock them out either. Remember, we're learning a handstand here, not a full planche. So no locked elbows just yet. If you can't do a tucked planche, you have to go back to doing strict dips so you can become stronger. If you are able to hold the position correctly without bending too much in the elbows, then you now have enough power to hold a handstand. The tucked planche actually requires more power to hold, and for whatever time I can hold it, I can pretty much hold a handstand for twice as much. So from this point on, of being able to hold a proper tucked planche, you have to go back to the part of this video where I discuss the balance of the handstand. Now I want to talk about the third big mistake people make. Not using a wall. When you're making your first attempts at a handstand, definitely use a wall. There's this big misconception that if you learn to use a wall, then you won't be able to do a handstand without it. That is only true for those who jump into the wall and just kick with their feet trying to find the balance. When I say use the wall, I don't mean jump into it and just kick with your feet. I mean go ahead and face a wall, next to the wall go into a tucked planche or this thing, and try to slowly lift into a handstand by keeping the shoulders in front of the palms and the waist, with no jumping or kipping or whatever else you want to call it. Your job is to avoid the wall. Don't let your feet touch the wall. That wall is there only to protect you, not to teach you. Remember, if your feet touch the wall, it's because you applied too much force into the handstand, which is not really that much of a bad thing. It shows that you're powerful and you need to control your power. Basically what I'm saying is, we're using the wall as protection, not as a tool to learn the handstand. And if your push is not strong enough, your feet will go back on the ground. And if you push too much, your feet will touch the wall. And that is it. That's the only function of the wall. Don't jump into it so you can kick off with your feet. In conclusion, you will get used to the wall if you jump into the wall, but you won't get used to it if you don't jump at all and only look at it as something that is there to protect you, not to teach you. So let's go over the more important points of this video again. 1. There are two types of handstands, straight and not straight. The completely straight is for the professional gymnast, but it's better to learn the not straight one if you're just an average person who wants to do a handstand and become stronger. 2. To do a not straight handstand, always remember the 3 balance points of your body and where they need to be. 3. When you put your hands on the ground right before you try to do a handstand, make sure about these things. First, use a wall. Second, don't be in a position for a sprint, be in a position for a handstand. 3. Don't jump. Instead, lift the handstand with your muscles. 4. You should always practice the tucked planche, but never bend the elbows too much. It's probably the most fundamental position that you will have to be able to hold before you can actually hold the handstand. So I hope this tutorial has given you a different perspective on the handstand. I wanted to make it a bit more detailed than your average handstand tutorial. I hope you can get your handstand sooner rather than later, because most of you watching this probably already have the power necessary.